The second week of October will mark the beginning of Mental Illness Awareness Week. It's a week of attention and advocacy focused around getting people to recognize the importance of mental health and to tackle the stigma surrounding a diagnosis. But here's what I want to talk about tonight, though. Problems associated with mental health, access, stigma, cost, they're disproportionately affecting minority communities. Also here in the Washington, D.C. area. My next guest is working to balance the scales. Adrienne Augustus is with me tonight. She's the founder of A Beautiful Mind Foundation. Adrienne and I actually went to school together at the College of Journalism at the University of Maryland. So it's interesting to see how we went in this direction and now you've pivoted to something else that's your passion. How did you come about that journey?
Well, transitioning out of journalism, I moved into communications and public relations, but I always did volunteer work. And really my journey through or towards this mental health mission started before journalism school when I was 11 and living with depression. And throughout my adolescence, I dealt with it, struggled with it at times. But over the years, I learned more about mental health doing my own research. And as I worked through public relations, corporate communications, I finally realized there's something more that I want to do. And mental health is a passion of mine. So that's why I decided it's time to start this foundation with a focus in cultural competency.
Yeah, and you have really found a void that you've been able to fill with this foundation. Can you talk about the lack of mental health and mental illness services, specifically in minority communities here in our area, and why you knew that was a place you needed to focus your attention?
Sure. Well, there are services available for people across the board when it comes to finding mental health support. But what we see with communities of color is that there are certain cultural elements that are preventing us from really talking about mental health, about mental illness, and getting access to services, and then also having providers who can bring support to individuals who are dealing with mental health from a perspective where, for instance, in the African American community, sometimes mental health is addressed simply by saying, go to church, pray about it. With the Latinx community, you have certain ideas of masculinity. In the Native American community, there's a high prevalence of alcoholism, and what you often see with mental illness is people self-soothing or self-medicating through alcohol and drugs. And so recognizing that there are different elements that impact mental health in different communities of color, it's important because you cannot fully address an issue without addressing all of the contributing factors.
So the nitty-gritty, what will your foundation actually be doing?
We are a 501c3 certified grant-making public charity, so we will provide funds to small organizations, groups that want to create education programs and services that focus on culturally competent mental health programming.
Gotcha. So there's got to be a whole host of organizations out there wanting to do that, just not knowing how to connect it, and that's where you come in just to kind of bridge that gap.
That's right. Yeah. So we are a new foundation, and we have our official launch and inaugural fundraiser on October 6th, which is, as you mentioned, the start of Mental Illness Awareness Week. But what we will do next year is provide grants that can be something as small as $500 to a church that wants to provide a one-day mental health symposium to its members, so that they can learn about mental health. But this is also not just about educating communities of color, it's also about providing information to the practitioners. Because for people who serve the individuals in communities of color, it's important that they understand what they're dealing with.
A very important void that needs to be filled, and it's only a shame it's taken this long for you to get on board with a foundation like this. A beautifulmindfoundation.org for information. Adrienne, thanks so much for coming in to talk with us.
Thank you, Adam.